Hi folks, we're going to try this one more time. I don't think it really went well the first time. So I've titled this Fun and Games Redo. And I do have a general theme or intent that I want to accomplish in this podcast. So I'm going to do it again. I'm Bruce McDonald and this is the Talamanca Review. It's 10:34 p.m. and it's the 16th of October, which is a Wednesday. Had a great day today. I got a little bit of work done. Had a wonderful sauna, and I'm really liking that sauna. But I've got to remember to drink some fresh squeezed lemon mixed with water and a little bit of brown sugar and a pinch of salt after to redo my electrolytes. Otherwise, I get these intense headaches. My wife took a sauna after me. And it was still really hot in there, but it was down to coals, and the really intense flame I had on top of the coal bed was gone. And she said she must have sweat a liter, and came out and just like drank a bunch of water. But I'm really enjoying the hi Spencer. I'm really enjoying the sauna. It's a really nice addition to my life. I got the the back deck done. I got 2 wooden decks done. Really nice hardwood. Like my brother-in-law goes out into the jungle and it cuts it down with a chainsaw, and every board is like hand planed. I get incredible prices on hardwoods that I don't think you could even get anywhere else. I mean, maybe you could, but you would pay so much for it. It's unbelievable. And so that's one benefit of where I live. And so the place is really coming together and really becoming comfortable. And it's really kind of a home now. And I'm very happy about all of that, So what happened last podcast was I got tagged. It started with me getting tagged for playing the Crispin's Day speech from Henry V, Shakespeare, the Kenneth Branagh film version. I guess they've got some kind of an algorithm in YouTube now that just seems to know when you're playing somebody else's content. I don't know how they do that. I don't know of anybody else getting hit with stuff like this, but anyway, so today is Fun and Games Redo. And this, of course, is the title is a reminder that we live in a hologram. It is, in fact, a hologram. It's a spiritual hologram. For those of you who are reading the Galactic Historian now, that's the first section of the first chapter of part 1 of the book. The very first thing you read after the introduction is hologram. And it really is a hologram. Now, it's not a simulacrum, and it's not a computer-generated hologram, the way some people are suggesting. It's a system, and it's a rules-based system. And there's nothing holding us here but our own decisions and our attachment to our bodies and our personalities, which don't really exist. They're illusions. I mean, I'm Bruce McDonald, obviously. I go through life as Bruce McDonald. My wife wakes up to Bruce McDonald every day. My dog knows Bruce McDonald. So, I mean, but when you get into your perception, okay, so your perception is what you perceive. It is your unit of perception, okay? And when you get into your perception, it goes beyond this body, and it goes beyond your personality. And in the final stages, it goes beyond even your mind. And you can experience it, and you bring it back down to your life. And you tell people, hey man, this is a hologram. It's basically an illusion. And nobody's going to believe you. Because there are some things that should not be believed unless they're experienced. Why would you believe something like that? Yeah, I'm telling you it's a hologram, but why would you believe that if you haven't experienced it? And I'm not expecting you to believe it. I'm just always trying to motivate people to make their own inner journey, to take seriously this inner journey and to try to figure it out themselves. Okay? Because as far as I'm concerned, it's the only reason human life exists, is to come to the realization that you're a spirit in a body, and that the spirit is the expression of your experiences, and the soul is the experiencer. Okay? So I wanted to start with that and give a little context to today's podcast, because as I get into it, it's going to get much more political and magical. Okay, because really what we're dealing with now is magic. What we're coming to understand is the magic that rules the world. And it is magic that's ruling the world now. And for those of you who believe in Tartaria and all that stuff, and the bygone age, which was, compared to what we're living now, a golden age, that would have been sorcery, which is a level beyond magic, okay? And sorcery is generally more benign, and it usually appears to be more scientific, even though it's still sorcery. So Nikola Tesla was not a scientist or an inventor, he was a sorcerer. It's very interesting, because there's a Christopher Nolan movie. I know I bring up movies a lot, but you got to bear with me here, folks. They're really worth talking about. Christopher Nolan magic film. We'll see which one it is. I forget. Oh yeah, The Prestige. 8.5 out of 10 on IMDb. That's a high end. That's probably in the top 100 movies on IMDb if it's at 8.5. That's a very high score because it's been up there since 2006, 18 years ago. So Chris Nolan's been making movies quite a while. But in The Prestige, they have two magicians who are in this bitter rivalry in the late 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s in Britain, and the two rival magicians are played by Christian Bale and Hugh Jackman. And it's one of the best movies you're ever going to see Hugh Jackman in. Hugh Jackman's not a super serious actor. The other incredible Hugh Jackman movie is The Prisoner, 2013. And the best portrait of a hardcore Satanist I've ever seen in my life. And I'll say no more, because it'll spoil the movie, and I don't want to spoil it for you. I want you to watch it. So, in The Prestige, they actually have, as a character in the movie, the real-life figure Nikola Tesla. Michael Caine, who Christopher Nolan likes quite a bit, he puts him in a lot of his movies. He's Alfred the Butler in the Batman movies. When these two magicians are competing with each other, and Michael Caine knows both of them, and he's the guy that buys it or has equipment fabricated or for the magicians. So they come up with a magic trick idea, saw a woman in half or something, and they go to Michael Caine, and he makes the equipment that creates the illusion on stage. And as the competition escalates, one of the magicians, the Christian Bale one, he asks Michael Caine's character to introduce him to Nicholas Tesla, who's known in England but considered just almost mad, right? And Christian Bale wants to take his magic to the next level. Or is it Hugh Jackman that goes to see him? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. And Michael Caine's got this great line. He goes, "Oh, sir, he's not a magician. He's a sorcerer." So we're run by magic. It took me a long time to just make that simple point, but that's the color commentary that makes the Talamanca Review what it is. And now what's happening is the magic is being flatlined. It's being shut down. It's not working anymore. Okay? And this has been going on for a while, but it's really apparent now. And they don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. There's a reason it's not working. It has something to do with what we're leading up to. It has something to do with a canceling magic, let's call it, a canceling magic. A magic that cancels other magic. And there's a tremendous amount of disclosure now. Okay? Like everything is coming out now. And it's coming out so hard and so fast. I'm wondering how people are dealing with this. You know, I've known about these things. Wow. I mean, my basic understanding of conspiracy and corrupt society goes back to about 2002. And my entryway was the money system. And I mean, I knew it was bad. I knew that basically usury was bad, but I never really understood how bad the money system was. And that was my first big area of research and investigation was the money system. And that was very eye-opening for me. Very, very eye-opening. And then once you hit one of these hurdles and you close it off and you go, yeah, this is true. And your mind will fight you. Because part of us always wants to stay in compliance with what the group is thinking. It's just human nature. It takes tremendous courage to leave the group and think independently. And at this time, 2002, nobody was talking about the money conspiracy. Just complete nut bars, right? People who were severely labeled as dangerous and almost terroristic. And by the way, it's the money issue and the illegitimacy of money and usury and the Federal Reserve that is the real reason they've gone after white nationalists so much. I mean, you could start black nationalism, and if you didn't address the money issue and the fraudulence of banking and the fraudulence of mortgages and all of this stuff, the government would probably give you a grant, even though it's the same thing, nationalism, racial nationalism, whether it's black nationalism or white nationalism. What scared them so much about white nationalism was the foundation of it was an explanation of money. And not in deference to a communist system or a socialist system, like capitalism is bad. That's not what white nationalism was about. It was about a sound money. And a sound money is like what we had before Nixon took us off the gold standard. And it's been unsound money since then. Some people might even say that the situation we're in today is a direct result of what Richard Nixon did back in 1971 or 1972 when he took the US dollar off the gold index, and most of the countries in the world followed. And this created the creation of excessive amounts of money. And, you know, some Cold War thinkers would have us believe that this might have been done to beat the Soviet Union. But if that's the case, then it was a hollow victory because we didn't really win. We won by overproducing money and having the world accept it. And Ronald Reagan taking us into Star Wars, and the Soviet Union throwing in the towel and saying, look, we're not going to commit this much of our gross domestic product to continue this arms race. We fold. And they folded. And some people think they never really folded. That, the Yuri Brzezinski, is that his name? Yeah, Yuri Brzezinski, the bald guy with the glasses, ex-KGB guy who lectures in the United States now in the West. He said that they never really quit, and that the subversion process had been implanted in the American system. It's very interesting to watch one of his videos. He breaks it all down in a very, very interesting way. But the point I'm making here is that my first breakthrough into this world of illusions and lies was the money system. And then every couple years another domino would fall. So feminism was right after the money for me. They almost went hand in hand. And this is because, like so many men of my generation, I went through the divorce court, the family law court in Canada. And I was okay with getting divorced and everything, but I expected joint custody, 50-50, and no child support, because I was a dedicated parent, and it just did not work out that way. And so I knew that the whole notion of equality was a lie. Now, a lot of people might not have been able to see that in 2003, but you should be able to see it now. If you can't see it now, there's something wrong with you, because it's very, very apparent now, and not that hard to see at all. Why would they deny a biological parent equal access to their child just based on gender, with everything they're doing with gender now? So what's happening at this stage of their plan is they're starting to trip over their own shoelaces, because there is no unified thesis here. There is no benign way to homogenize and collectivize all of these piecemeal progressive agendas that have come out in stages, in sequence, because they never do it all at once. They do it in stages, in sequence. But Gen X is in a perfect position to add them all together. The baby boomers, they just want to ride into the sunset with their retirement savings and their summer houses if they're so lucky, and not really worry about what comes next, okay? And Gen X is picking up a lot of the pieces. We're becoming a significant linchpin generation in trying to hold together the continuity of Western society. And then I guess after us, the millennials would be, I'm 58, so the generations are about, I think baby boomers are like 45 to 65. I don't know. I'm 66, so I'm like an early Gen Xer. But I don't know if, yeah, so I mean, the millennials, if it's 20 years, then the millennials would be like in their late 30s, early 40s now, right? And I don't think they've had tremendous success with the whole family thing and everything. I have friends who've done well at it, like happily married, 4 kids and everything. But few and far between. And generally where I see it happen, the people who make it happen are generally like first generation Canadians, right? So their parents were the immigrants. So like Italians and Polish and things like this. But the traditional Anglo-Saxon, Canadian and American culture has had the family completely decimated. So it went money and then family. But I couldn't really put everything together back then in like 2005, 2006. I could not for the life of me figure out what it was that they were doing. Because it just seemed destructive. And it seemed like at the time, I think if I'm honest with myself, the way I perceived it was retributive politics. So, with the advancements made by women in second and third wave feminism, they were being given an opportunity by our justice systems and by our governments to punish men, to get a little payback for what was perceived as an abusive patriarchy for the last 100 years. And if I thought about that honestly, I thought, you know what? It kind of was an abusive patriarchy. There wasn't, and so I didn't really see it the way I should have seen it. The money bothered me. That bothered me more even than family court. And I was raised by an economist, and I can tell you, I mean, I would be home for like Christmas or something for like 3 or 4 days, and we would just get into the most heated arguments in my family. My brother was a chartered financial analyst, and my father was an economist who worked for the government, and it was just like, you guys are complete morons, man. You don't even know what money is or how it operates or, how it's produced or what legitimizes it or what stabilizes it. And they always had these like bullshit answers to everything, just what they were trained to say in their economics and business classes. And I hate it when somebody gives me a memorized answer and it's absolutely clear to me that they don't even understand what it is that they're saying. They're just repeating something they were told, and there's, well, this is the way. This is what everybody believes, Bruce. You believe what you want to believe, Bruce, but this is what the rest of the world believes. And I'm like, well, I don't really care what I believe or you believe. Like, why can't we just like make sense of this and come to like an object truth about it? People didn't want to do that, and you could see the failing in their thinking processes way back then. And when you go down this path, when you go down the path of revealing what's going on in the world to yourself, you find that not many people want to follow you. And it's not that they necessarily disagree with what you're saying or anything like that. It's more that they just don't want the hassle. They just don't want to stand up in the canoe. They're just hoping to get a good, normal life and to have a house and to have a career, and they don't want the big revolution. I was born for the revolution. This sort of revolutionary spirit has just always been in me since I was 4 years old. It's just, I've always been a table turner, in referencing, the Gospels where Christ loses his temper in the temple with the money changers. And it's just always who I've been. And I didn't necessarily recognize that as a spiritual disposition until, relatively recently, like the last 10 or 15 years, in my mid-40s. And I always thought I was just more of an artistic temperament. That's how I rationalized it, right? Because I had already taken up the serious practice of art, literary art, by the age of 19, 20. And by serious, I mean, wow, man, like I might, in my spare time, I might devote 10,000 hours to writing by the time I was in my early 20s. So I don't know if I were to divide that by 40, how many weeks that would be. Let's say 50 hours in a week. 2 weeks is 100 hours. It's a lot of time. Maybe not 10,000 hours a year, but 3,000 or 4,000 hours a year of writing. I mean, just writing and writing and rewriting and just trying to get your craft perfect and your language perfect and your storytelling and the magic of your story. What is it you're saying? What are you reaching for? And in that process of trying to purify myself as an artistic consciousness, all of the political and social stuff just became like collateral damage of that artistic purity, right? That's what happened to me. And so it started with money, and then the family, and then around 2006 or so, I read my first David Icke book, and I went, "Wait a minute, you got to be kidding me, right?" Now remember, I started meditating in like I started meditating in like 1983. So I mean, I'd already been meditating for 18, 19 years. And what I didn't realize at the time was that a lot of the stuff that was coming to me at this period of my life was being magnetized into my consciousness, which I had sort of set to the mindset of a truth seeker. And so you'll manifest what you desire. And I wanted the truth. So a lot of things just started coming at me. And this just kind of went on for my whole life. Like, I mean, like from 4 years old and right up until now. But now I'm at peace with it. And I've been at peace with it for about a decade. But it took me to my late 40s. And I've come to a clear understanding of who I am now. Socially, politically, spiritually, genetically, in terms of my family line. Like I just know who and what I am now. And in that knowledge comes a much clearer sense of what my mission or purpose is in life. So, I engaged all the reptile stuff with David Icke. I didn't make the connection to the Buddhist sutras back then. I don't think I'd read the sutras by 2006. By about 2010, I started to make connections because I was reading books by that time, like the Anurag Sagar by Kabir, and he was talking about the 4 kinds of sentient life that have been on this planet. And he did reference what he called the egg-born people, which of course would be reptilian, right? And or serpentine, let's say, but born of an egg. And sentient means like sentient hominid, like a human being. You can think, you can reason, you have elementary self-awareness, okay? And then everything just sort of came in and came in and came in and came in. The Jewish thing first came into my life in 1997. And it's an interesting story. So I already had, how would I put this? I already by this time had what I would call a discordant vibration. And what I mean when I say discordant vibration, what it means is that a perceptive person, just being around me without hearing me speak or anything, a sensitive and perceptive person would know that I don't fit in, that I'm thinking differently and I'm perceiving differently. And as I went out into my professional life in high tech, the first people to pick up on this were Jews. So my first few years working, I made all of these Jewish friends in high tech, and they were Russian Jews to boot. And they had just recently emigrated from Eastern Europe. And these guys were super smart. Like, they were the lead engineers in the companies I was working for. And the senior managers in the company, what are these engineers doing going to lunch with Bruce McDonald in technical writing every day, right? Because I'm way down the totem pole. But the Jews have a kind of sixth sense for when you're involved in an inner search, or you're a spiritual aspirant, or if you're poking around in the occult. They just know. How they know, I don't know. They just know. Okay? I could speculate, but what's the point of me speculating here on the Telemanker Review? They just know. And then, and I made some of my first I would say, spiritual friends outside of the meditation groups I had studied with in these Russian Jewish engineers. And I hung around with them for about 4 or 5 years. Like, even after I quit that company, I continued to go to social engagements with them, weddings and stuff like that. I got invited to their weddings, all kinds of stuff. And what I picked up very clearly, okay, number one, I was let into the circle. So the first thing they want to know is, and every Jew wants to know this, okay, what's your opinion on Christ? Okay, that is like a question you have to answer correctly to get into a closer friendship with a Jewish intellectual who's practicing occult or Kabbalistic art. Okay, and I had already disavowed Christ as a spiritual teacher. I mean, I said, look, culturally, I was raised Catholic, but I left the church at 15. This is what I do now. I meditate. This is the kind of meditation I do. And I could do a few things even back then. They tested me one time, my Russian Jewish friends. They wrote a 10-digit number out and asked me if I could psychically guess what it was. And I went into a meditative trance for about 5 minutes. I came out and I recited 10 numbers. And this is what freaked them out. It was the 10 numbers they wrote down. I gave it back to them in reverse. Now, I don't know if I could still even do that. My first girlfriend, too. I used to meditate all the time, and she'd go, what's the benefit of meditation? And I would say, well, I don't know. I'm trying to grow spiritually, grow my consciousness. And she'd say, well, she was studying psychiatry at university. And she would say stuff like, well, I'm very curious about this. And she would do these psychic tests too. She would write things down in an envelope, put them in an envelope, not seal it, lick it shut, but close the envelope. And she said, I have 3 things in this envelope. I wanted you to tell me what I wrote down. It was these perceptual tests for psychic ability. And I would always get very, very close, but and no clues. Like, you don't have any idea what they wrote down. It's like the remote viewing thing, right? You don't have any idea whatsoever what they wrote down. And my first girlfriend, this started when I was about 20, 21, so I'd only been meditating about 4 years. And she would write stuff like cathedral, and I would say Catherine. And so there would be this lexical or semantic correlation to what she wrote. And by running through these psychology experiments that she set up for me, what she deduced was I was linguistically psychic, which is a very weird thing, which again goes with this whole identity of being a writer, right? But the Jewish thing happened in like from 97 to 2002. I had all these Russian Jewish friends, and I became aware of how dark they are. Like, I have yet to meet a Russian Jew not knowledgeable in black magic. And I mean like 1,000, 2,000 hours of study and practice. I mean, these guys knew how to possess people with, like, I don't know why I've never spoken about this stuff on the Talamanca Review before. I never really tell personal stories. I do and I don't, right? Like I told the ghost story. The ghost story, a simple ghost story, if you go back to the beginning of this podcast, like in the first month or 2, I did a simple ghost story for those of you who remember it at the cottage, the island cottage. This is the same girlfriend that would do the psychic tests on me. And so we went through this whole thing with her stepbrother at the cottage and having to tell her father, who was a psychiatrist. It was a whole trip. But, I mean, the Russian Jews, they knew how to do shit. Like they could make a little symbolic figurine, like a lesser key of Solomon, but they would fabricate it out of solid copper wire. and they would hand it to you like a gift, and you would get this thing, and it would be like a Coptic cross or something. It would go up like this, there would be a circle, and then the copper would wind around it like a coil, and it would have two arms come out like this at the side. So when you held it like this, it looked exactly like a Coptic cross with a circle on top. But if you left it on your desk for a week or a month at work, you'd get possessed. These guys knew how to do all this stuff, right? I guess the reason I'm telling these stories tonight is to give you an understanding of like the lifetime of involvement in consciousness and scripture and all of these weird little experiences in my life that have brought me to a point where I can do these podcasts and tell you with relative confidence, I'm about 95% sure that my take on what's going on in the world now is accurate, okay? And I don't know who needs to hear this stuff from my past and all this. I don't know who needs to hear this. I just do this podcast completely intuitively. So I went through the Jewish thing, and then I realized they were very dark, but it didn't bother me because I just accepted light and dark in the world. I'd already gotten way past that in my consciousness as a meditator, as a contemplator. Some people are going to have dark, and I believe I knew about reincarnation by this time. And I had been told by many of the advanced practitioners of the meditations I studied and practiced that, look, we all do dark stuff in our past lives. You should never judge people. So I didn't judge. But I did not see the whole thing, like what's coming into focus now. Okay? Until about 20... to be honest with you, the first person I spoke about it with, like the Temple of Solomon and everything, was John Edmonds, the Stardust Ranch guy. And the reason I spoke about it with John Edmonds is, if you go back and you remember that book, toward the end, we start to get into the stuff that would become the basis of The Light of Darkness and The Devil in Us, a memoir of you and me. And John told me straight up that black magic was given to the human race by the reptilians. And then I asked him about the Temple of Solomon and stuff, and he didn't want to talk about it. Anybody who's been through the programs, like the MK Ultra programs and stuff like that, if you want to spook the shit out of them, ask them about the Temple of Solomon. Because there's all this programming in them to guard those secrets, if they know them to begin with, okay? And Jewish scientists and Jewish thinking is a big part of the Western application of MK Ultra, and I suspect the Russian application of it too, okay? So John told me that the reptilians gave the human race black magic. And then I remembered all my Russian Jewish friends from like 20 years earlier, 22 years earlier. I'm working on Stardust Ranch in 2019. I had my Russian Jewish friends in like 1997. I'm going, hey, you know what? That explains a lot. So I started to make the connection between the reptilians and Jewish culture. Okay? And then the next thing I noticed was how many of these people in the UFO movement are quietly or secretly Jewish. Okay? So when you think of like sort of the big figures in the disclosure movement in the last 15, 20 years or so, let's say 15, let's say about 17 or 18 years, go back to about 2008 or so, okay? Well, certainly it was Project Camelot did a lot of good work from about 2007 until Bill and Carrie broke up. Well, Carrie's Jewish, okay? And as she goes through this entire topicality, what is the one topic she pathologically avoids? The Jewish topic, okay? So who's the de facto? I say de facto because it means he's really the guy, but he doesn't have official title by government seal. Okay? So de jure is official title by government seal. De facto is you are officially the guy, but you don't have the title. So the de facto government UFO disclosure guy is Stephen Greer. Now, other guys who've actually been in the programs have tried to come out and usurp him, and he attacks them all. Now, you got to ask yourself, well, if they're all on the same team, why is Stephen Greer doing that? Okay? Stephen Greer is an Orthodox Jew and a closet homosexual. Orthodox Jewish marriage to a Jewish woman, and I think he has kids, but he's that Justin Trudeau, Emmanuel Macron sexuality. He likes the sodomy. Okay? Sorry to out you, Stephen. I think a lot of people know, but if a lot of people don't know, there it is. Now, some people will say, Bruce, you should never talk about a person's sexuality. It has nothing to do with what Stephen Greer has brought to the world in terms of our understanding of the UFO presence here. Bruce, he's risked his life, and you're trying to make him look stupid just because he has homosexual tendencies. No, not really. I'm just pointing out a pattern. Okay? Why are there so many fucking catamites in leadership positions in the world now? Okay? There's another one. A fucking catamite leading the UFO disclosure brigade. Okay? Why? What is it about homosexuality? Why are Jews and homosexuals like this? Why is Douglas Murray their greatest secular champion? I say secular because he's not religiously Jewish. Right? Because nobody's done more for the homosexuals than the Jews. So they're like Siamese twins now. Okay? And look, I'm just going to say this, okay? And this is going to make me sound like some fundamentalist Christian, and I don't care anymore. I don't even care how people take me anymore, right? I got a nice place to live where people love me, and I'm just the guy who takes care of his family and pays the bills and loves his wife and loves his nieces and nephews and is trying to start a little tourism business in the Talamanca Mountains. So I have this whole life that will be untouched or unbothered by anything I say or do on this podcast. So I really just don't give a shit anymore. I'm just going to say exactly what I think at the deepest levels of my reasoned intuition. And what I mean by that is I'm not just going to spit something out that crosses through my head, okay? If something passes through my head, I will consider it, I will meditate on it, I will ask for spiritual insight and go into a contemplation on the topic and see what spirit, awakened imagination tells me. Well, I already did that with the homosexuals quite some time ago. And I've never been really forthright about what came back and what I think it is. There's a lot of demonic activity in homosexuality. Okay, so there's the coupling with the Jews right there, the demonic synergy, okay? Demonic coupling, demonic synergy. But there it is again with Stephen Greer. And Carrie Cassidy was a very weird woman as well. The stories behind the scenes in the UFO and disclosure world was many of her key interviews were secured by giving sexual favors to the high-end insider who was risking his life to give the interview. Carrie would sleep with you. Okay? And that's a thing with Jewish women too. Okay? They're like the burn bombs from Miller's Crossing, if you've ever seen that Coen Brothers movie. A brother and sister team who turn the organized crime world upside down in what appears to be the 30s or 40s in an unnamed city. My favorite movie, by the way, of all time, Miller's Crossing. You should definitely watch it. So even the UFO stuff didn't really... I never thought it was a big thing. I mean, I saw my first UFO when I was 9. My brother saw it with me. Saw another one when I was like 36 36 or 37. So you know that story I told on my podcast about going to the cabin in the woods and working on a novel rewrite and bumping into Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus at the donut shop and everything? It was coming back from that 12-week retreat and fast and writing and meditating and fasting retreat. 12 weeks, 3 months. One of the longest durations I've ever gone in seclusion like that. UFO above my house, again witnessed by another person, okay? And so I never made too much about the UFOs. Like, I was always just sort of focused on the goal of God consciousness. And I had some really good meditation instructors that I was able to interact with, send emails to, and call, and they became kind of like spiritual mentors or guides. And I'm like, hey, I saw a UFO. Oh yeah, that's no big deal. Everybody who meditates sees a UFO sooner. Keep going, right? But there's always some opportunist looking to make money off of this. Like, I'm not saying the Bledsoe family themselves, are like that, but definitely the people around them are using them, right? But if you meditate a lot and you get your vibration up to a certain level, you're going to encounter the orbs. I see the orbs internally most of the time. They don't externalize, but I see them internally in almost at the beginning of almost every meditation. Okay, I see orbs. This has been in my life since I was 17. Orbs, okay? And as above, so below, as within, so without, okay? So my orbs don't physically manifest, although I might be able to physically manifest them. I don't know. I've never tried. It's just never interested me. These things have always been just distractions for me on the road to God consciousness, okay? So I went through all the UFO stuff and everything, and, and it was around the time of John Edmonds that I started to figure out, or that it was intuitively gifted to me, that the Temple of Solomon was the actual goal of these secret societies. But even then, I didn't care. I didn't care. It was like, okay, so what? All right, so a bunch of crazy Jews want to build their old temple. Who cares, right? And then it would just not leave me alone, though. It just kept coming back and coming back and coming back. And I'm going, oh, my God, like, what do you want me to do with this? And Spirit, which is a catch-all phrase I use for my internal directive and my internal mentor, which is amorphous. It's not a being per se. I don't know how to describe it to you. If you don't meditate, I can't describe it to you. I said, Spirit, why do you keep bringing me back to the third temple? Like, what do you want me to do about all this? And it would just kept saying, just stay on top of the topic, stay on top. We're going to ask you to do something at a certain point. And I said, okay. And then I would start to just sort of casually mention it on podcasts. So, by the way, the big goal in Judaic is the third temple of Solomon. And then I blurted this out in, I think in 2020 in those Brian Rue interviews. And it was too early. Nobody was ready to hear that. It was way too early. Nobody could see it. Nobody could make the connection. Even this guy who lives on the other side of the mountain here, Shinyamurti, opened up an ashram. He claims to be an enlightened master. He did a podcast a couple years ago. Saying that, the third temple's a red herring. But he's wrong. More and more and more, it's coming up, isn't it? Okay? And the rabbis are bringing it up and bringing it up and bringing it up. And then, when COVID happened, when the pandemic happened, that's when all of my indifference went away. When sort of my ability to not care about these things anymore and stay focused on my goal of achieving and maintaining God consciousness, it kind of got not usurped, but co-opted by this other Bruce that's always been a part of me since I've been very young. and that is the communicator, the journalist, the documentarian. And I was like, well, I got an obligation to talk about this because, I mean, all of these things are connected in the world now. Okay? And it's just becoming more and more and more clear. And, you listen to those rabbis from yesterday, the old world has to be destroyed before the new world can be built. Well, I mean, they're basically admitting they're behind this mass killing. They're behind these wars. They're behind everything. They say Hashem wants it this way. But remember what I told you. When a Jew says Hashem, they mean the Jewish consciousness and the will of the rabbis interpreting and implementing the prophecies, not waiting for the prophecies to happen. You see, you almost have to invert the time in the prophecies to understand how Jews approach them. The Christian, or the passive receptor to the prophecies, is, oh, when is God going to make this happen? Like some fucking moron in a cornfield waiting for the rapture. That's not how the Jews do it. Okay? The Jews read a prophecy and they go, well, Hashem said this is supposed to happen around this astrological time. We're almost there according to the Gregorian calendar. We should do this, 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 and this. And they go out and do it. And then they say, well, it's God's will. It was a prophecy. Really? Really? That's how you interpret prophecy. That's the secret of the Jews right there, folks. I just gave it better than anyone's ever going to give it to you, okay? Adam Green or any of these other virulent anti-Semites on BitChute and stuff like that. And I call them virulent anti-Semites because I'm not an anti-Semite. I like Jews, all right? I wish they would come to their senses and break out of the Jew trance, but I think it's a collective, and there's definitely, I got to be honest, there's definitely demonic genetics in that bloodline, okay? Something happened with King Solomon that has fucked them for 3,000 years, and they can't live normal lives, and they can't have normal feelings, and they can't really feel love. And it's because of all this demonic energy they got involved in, okay? And it's never left. You think it left? It got worse when the temple got destroyed. And then it got worse when the second temple got destroyed in 72 AD, because when you're working with these dark energies in blood magic, you need a physical power base manifest on the planet, a manasa. If you're a Palomayombi which is a little temple in your backyard, it could be a woodshed, and you got your candles, and there'll be blood on the altar where you kill your chickens, and that's where you go to do your prayers. That's where you go to speak to the spirits that you interact with and control. Now, the Temple of Solomon is that Manasseh is junior kindergarten in the world of magic. The third temple is like CERN. It's like postgraduate, postgraduate, postgraduate. It's the best of the best in the world of black magic because the Jews are really good at that stuff, okay? So, and I don't judge them. It's just the lot they were given in this incarnational cycle. And I'm sure there's a version of me in my incarnational pattern on this planet that went through 1,000 or 2,000 years of the exact same thing that the Jews are doing now, okay? In a bygone era before this 6,000 year history. I probably did it in Atlantis, or I did it as I may have done 15 or 20 lives as a Negro black magician in Africa 50,000 years ago. But what I know is it's out of my system. I don't, and how I know that is I'm not drawn to it. Okay? So if you have to learn something, you'll be drawn to what you have to learn. And one of the ways you'll be drawn in is judgment. Remember what I said? Okay? You'll be drawn in by judgment because judgment is a petition for experience. Okay? So here we are. Fun and games redo. This is what I tried to do in the first podcast, but all the technical and direct interference from the YouTube authorities prevented me from doing a continuous 1 hour, which is, or 50, 55 minutes, which seems to be the time I need to get my point across. And if everything works out, it just comes out like a spontaneous poem. And thank you for all of you who are commenting and everything. But this is what's going on right now, okay? So we're at this epic moment in history where these crazy fucking rabbis are literally making their prophecies come true. Now, the ancillary question is, why is there so much non-Jewish support in Western governments? Is that just ancillary collateral association through Kabbalistic study in Masonry and various other secret societies controlled by the Jews and the rabbis? Or is it the Jeffrey Epstein thing? They've all done horrible things and they're compromised and they can't step out of line, or they'll be horrified and their families will be horrified. It's probably a combination of those two things. And then everybody underneath that level, they just do what they're told at risk of being fired. But that level is starting to rebel now. That's where we're getting all the whistleblowers, right? And a lot of them are Gen X that are retiring in their mid-50s. Okay, 55, I'm retired. Now I'm going to tell the truth about what's really going on. We're getting a lot of that right now. But they've got this system, and this is why The Light of Darkness is such an important book. And you can get that in audio too, on Audible, on, just so you know, on Amazon. You know, but the fossilization and control of the money system is the fulcrum of control on the planet now, because you can't live without money. It's not like 100 years ago where you could have, pig pen, chicken coop, some goats, there's your milk, an apple orchard with 15 trees, and your neighbors grow this, and you don't really need money. Money's nice. You buy new shoes and suits, but you don't need money. Now you can't do anything without money. And everything is locked down by either civil service work or large transnational corporations, which are really arms of the government right now. And then you got this dark horse coming in, which is, of course, the sacrificial altar, okay? I mean, you guys get the little word magic there, right? Black rock. Black rock is obsidian stone. Obsidian stone is the stone they use for the satanic human and child sacrifices. They're not even hiding it anymore. If you have the eyes to see it, they're not even hiding it anymore. Anyways, I'm pretty happy with this Fun and Games redo. I think I got it right the second time. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review. Peace out.